Long before the age of men, the galaxy was alive with countless races. Civilizations grew on different stars, each with its own language, its own pride, and its own power. Some built empires of light, others sang songs across the void, and many thought they were eternal. But then came the galactic beasts. No one knew from where they arrived. Some said they were born in the black storms beyond the edge of the universe. Others whispered that they were the broken children of ancient gods. What was certain was this: they came to conquer, and nothing stood in their way. The beasts were not like any life form the galaxy had ever seen. They were massive creatures, half flesh and half machine. Their bodies glowed with fire, their claws were sharper than steel, and their ships were living fortresses that screamed as they moved. They were not an army. They were a storm, a living plague. Wherever they landed, cities turned into ruins. Entire worlds bent the knee or were consumed in fire. At first, the galaxy tried to resist. Great fleets of shining starships rose against them. Millions of soldiers swore to protect their people. But against the beasts, all weapons seemed weak. Lasers bounced off their armor. Bombs only slowed them for seconds before they healed. One by one, proud empires collapsed. Planets that had lasted thousands of years fell in a single night. Fear spread faster than light. Soon, there was no resistance. Species that once ruled the stars now bowed in chains. The beasts made themselves the masters of the galaxy. They fed on submission, on fear, and on the silence of those who no longer dared to fight. But power makes monsters arrogant, and arrogance makes them blind. When the beasts reached a small blue planet on the edge of a minor system, they thought it would be their easiest victory. It was called Earth. To the beasts, humans looked weak, fragile, and slow. They had no claws, no wings, no scales. Their weapons were primitive compared to the giants of the galaxy. The beasts laughed among themselves. They said this new species would fall in one cycle of their war. They said humans would kneel like all the others. And yet, in the heart of humanity, there burned something no beast could see. It was not strength of body, nor power of technology. It was something hidden in the mind and the soul. Other races had chosen survival by kneeling, but humans had another choice. They chose to stand. The first invasion came with fire raining from the skies. Great cities turned to ash. Millions of humans died in only a few days. Entire nations fell silent under the shadow of the beast war machines. To any outside eye, Earth was already lost. But humanity did not surrender. Soldiers fought in burning streets with nothing but rifles and courage. Farmers turned their tools into weapons. Children carried messages through ruins. Engineers worked day and night, turning scraps into bombs. Every human who lived became part of the resistance. It was madness in the eyes of the galaxy. How could a small, fragile species fight the beasts who had conquered empires? But there was something the galaxy had never seen before. Humanity did not fight for power, or for empire, or for gold. They fought because they refused to kneel. They fought because their home was burning. They fought because freedom meant more to them than life itself. The beasts crushed armies, but every time they thought they had won, another human stood up with a weapon in hand. One soldier became 10. 10 became 100. Entire cities fought back even in ruins. The beasts began to notice something strange. For the first time in their history, their enemies were not afraid. Fear was the weapon the beasts always used, but on Earth, fear was met with anger. Fear was met with fire. And anger spread like a disease the beasts could not control. In the shadows of burning cities, humans studied the monsters. They watched how the beasts moved, how they healed, how their machines worked. Weak they may have been in body, but strong they were in mind. The first sparks of strategy were born. The first traps were prepared. And the galaxy, still silent, began to whisper. Perhaps the beasts had found an enemy unlike any other. Perhaps the small blue world would not bow so easily. The beasts, in all their arrogance, did not yet understand what they had awoken. They had woken a species that would fight until the last breath. They had woken a fire that would spread beyond Earth, a fire that could light the galaxy. Humanity was fragile, yes. But fragile does not mean weak. And when the fragile break their chains, the galaxy itself can tremble. The beasts believed Earth would fall in days, but days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Every attack they launched brought destruction, yet it also brought resistance. Humanity refused to kneel. Other species had chosen survival through surrender, but mankind had chosen defiance. When the first beast armies landed, humans fought in the streets, in forests, in deserts, in the cold of mountains and the heat of jungles. They had no great fleets, no cosmic weapons, and no armies compared to the galaxy's might, but they had something different, the will to fight at any cost. The beasts mocked this at first. They called humans foolish insects, struggling against an ocean of power. They believed fear would break their spirit, like it had broken all others. But they did not understand humans. When fear struck mankind, it did not turn into surrender. It turned into rage, into courage, into fire. Cities were turned to rubble, yet inside those ruins humans laid traps. Roads filled with craters became ambush points. Bridges the beasts crossed were destroyed beneath them. Every street corner, every shadow, every ruined home became a battlefield. Humanity did not wait for rescue. They did not beg for mercy. They fought with what little they had. Farmers carried rifles older than their fathers. Mechanics turned broken cars into bombs. Miners used dynamite against armored beasts. Even children played their part, carrying food and messages through dangerous lands. Each human, no matter their age, became a soldier in spirit. It was not strength of body that shocked the beasts, but strength of will. The beasts had crushed empires with far greater armies and far greater weapons, yet none had resisted as humans did. Other races had seen the beasts as gods and knelt, but humans looked at them and saw monsters that could bleed. And so, they began to search for weakness. In underground shelters, scientists worked without rest. They studied the fallen pieces of beast machines. They cut into the flesh of dead monsters. They wrote notes, tested weapons, and shared secrets across the ruins of their world. Slowly, painfully, they began to understand. The beasts were powerful, but not perfect. Their armor was alive, but it could burn. Their machines were fast, but they could be hacked. Their bodies healed, but only if not struck with certain weapons. Knowledge became the sharpest blade humanity had. In secret, they spread it to their fighters. And the beasts, who thought they had faced everything the galaxy could offer, suddenly faced something new, human strategy. Guerrilla war began. Human fighters moved like shadows. They attacked quickly and vanished. A convoy destroyed here, a command post blown up there, a ship sabotaged from the inside. The beasts grew angry, but anger could not crush what they could not see. They tried to burn forests, flatten cities, poison rivers, but still humans returned, rising from ashes again and again. The galaxy watched in silence. News traveled even when the beasts tried to stop it. Whispers spread to enslaved worlds. Stories of fragile humans fighting the unbeatable monsters reached the ears of those who had given up hope. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy began to wonder, could the beasts be defeated? The beasts themselves began to feel something they had not known in ages. Frustration. Victory had always been quick, but here it was slow, painful, costly. They destroyed armies, yet resistance only grew. For every human they killed, 2 more stood up. For every city they burned, 100 ambushes were prepared in its ruins. This was not war as the beasts knew it. This was survival. Humanity was not fighting to win glory or conquer worlds. They fought because they had no choice. They fought because surrender meant slavery. They fought because freedom was written in their hearts. And slowly, very slowly, the beasts began to realize this was not just another conquest. It was something different, something dangerous. For in their defiance, humans lit a fire that no storm could put out. The beasts called them fragile, but fragile things can cut the deepest when broken. Humanity had lost cities, had lost millions of lives, but they had not lost their spirit. And in war, spirit was more dangerous than any weapon. Deep inside, even as Earth burned, humans began to believe. Believe that the beasts were not gods. Believe that they could fall. Believe that even the mightiest empire could bleed. That belief was a seed, and like all seeds, it was growing. Soon, it would break the soil and reach the stars. The war for Earth raged on, and though humanity had refused to surrender, the truth was bitter. Millions were dead, cities were in ruins, and the beasts still controlled the skies. Humanity fought bravely, but bravery alone could not defeat monsters who commanded fleets of living warships. Yet in the darkness of this hopeless war, a small group of human scientists and soldiers prepared a plan so dangerous and so desperate that even their own leaders doubted it. Deep inside the mountains, far from the eyes of the beasts, hidden laboratories worked day and night. There, humans combined their own primitive technology with scraps of alien machines they had captured from fallen beast soldiers. It was not elegant, it was not beautiful, but it was deadly. They built weapons no human had ever seen before. Nuclear warheads modified with alien reactors, electromagnetic bombs designed to cripple beast technology, and hacking programs written to invade the nervous systems of living ships. Their goal was simple yet impossible: to bring down a beast warship. For as long as the galaxy could remember, no beast ship had ever fallen. They were flying nightmares, part machine, part living creature, armored with flesh that healed faster than any blade could cut. But humans did not see an invincible monster. They saw a challenge. They saw a target. And they swore to prove that even the beasts could bleed. When the time came, the plan was set in motion. A small group of human pilots flew into orbit with stolen alien signals, broadcasting codes that tricked the beasts into believing their ships were allies. The beasts, arrogant and careless, took the bait. A massive warship, larger than any human city, descended into Earth's orbit, seeking to crush the last traces of resistance. But this time, humanity was ready. The humans lured the warship into the range of hidden nuclear silos buried deep beneath mountains. At the same time, the hacking program was released, carried on signals bouncing from satellite to satellite. For a moment, the beast warship slowed. Its living armor shivered, its weapons glowed with confusion. And in that moment, the nukes were launched. Dozens of human-made weapons, carrying both fire and alien corruption, tore through the sky and struck the beast vessel. The explosion lit the heavens, brighter than any sunrise. The warship roared, a living scream of pain, its body cracking under the assault. The hacking code spread inside it like a virus, shutting down its healing systems. For the first time in history, a beast ship did not recover. It burned. It fell. The giant, once feared as untouchable, collapsed in flames across the night sky. On Earth, the people who watched lifted their heads from the ruins and saw fire raining down, not on their cities, but on their enemy. They saw a beast destroyed. And in that single moment, hope was born. The beasts were not gods. They were not eternal. They could be defeated. Humanity had done the impossible. They had claimed the first victory. Across the galaxy, enslaved species heard the whispers. Secret channels carried the news from world to world. On planets where silence had ruled for centuries, voices began to rise. They asked, "Who are these humans? How can such a fragile race do what no empire dared? If humans could fight back, maybe others could too." The beasts themselves were shaken. They had underestimated mankind. To them, humanity had been nothing but an insect, a fragile creature destined to be crushed like countless others before. But insects had stung, and this sting drew blood. Anger spread through the beast commanders. They ordered greater armies, larger fleets, and harsher punishments. They swore to erase humanity from existence for this insult. Yet no matter how many threats they gave, the truth could not be erased. A beast warship had fallen to human hands. And that truth was stronger than any fear. On Earth, the victory came at a terrible cost. Many humans had died to bring down the warship, and entire regions were still burning. But even through the smoke, the survivors lifted their heads with pride. They had not just defended their planet. They had changed history. In the silence after the flames, a new thought was born in the human mind. If they could bring down one warship, why not another? If they could study one weakness, why not find more? And if they could defeat the beasts in orbit above their own world, then maybe, one day they could carry the fight beyond Earth. The beasts had conquered all worlds, but for the first time, their power was questioned. Humanity had drawn the first line of defiance. Humanity had carved the first scar on the skin of the unstoppable empire. And though the war was far from over, the galaxy now knew something it had forgotten for ages. The beasts were not invincible. The fall of the beast warship was more than a victory, it was a signal, a flame that told humanity they could fight back, and once hope was born, it refused to die. The beasts, furious and humiliated, sent greater armies, larger fleets, and endless waves of destruction toward Earth. Their goal was no longer simple conquest but total extermination. They wanted to erase the insult of their defeat and crush the fragile humans who dared to resist. Yet humanity had learned something important. They understood that they could not meet the beasts in open battles. For in open battle the monsters were stronger, faster, and nearly impossible to kill. But humans were clever, and cleverness was sharper than claws. So they changed their way of fighting. They abandoned the idea of great armies and instead turned to shadows. The War of Shadows had begun. Human fighters no longer waited for the beasts to strike, they struck first. They became ghosts in the ruins, ambushing patrols, sabotaging supply lines, and planting bombs in the very paths the beasts marched. They turned underground tunnels into mazes of traps. They hacked beast communications, feeding them lies and luring them into deadly ambushes. Where the beasts expected submission, they found defiance. Where they expected fear, they found fury. To the beasts it was madness. To humanity it was survival. And in this survival, they discovered their greatest weapon, unpredictability. The beasts had crushed empires because those empires had fought like empires, with fleets, armies, and rules. But humans fought like hunters, like survivors, like shadows moving through the night. Every defeat turned into another lesson, and every lesson made them stronger. Soon entire beast convoys were lost in forests, entire squads disappeared in deserts, and entire ships exploded from sabotage planted by hands that vanished before capture. The beasts grew frustrated, their commanders screamed, their punishments became crueler, yet still the humans refused to kneel. Other enslaved races, silent for centuries, began to notice. Secret whispers spread through hidden channels. Stories of fragile humans bringing down monsters reached far-off worlds. For the first time in generations, the galaxy felt something dangerous, something forbidden, hope. The beasts sensed this shift and became desperate. They unleashed more terror, burning whole cities, poisoning rivers, and executing thousands in public displays to break the human spirit. But even in the face of such horror, humanity grew fiercer. Every act of cruelty became fuel for vengeance. Every life taken was honored by another act of defiance. Humanity had become a swarm of shadows, impossible to crush completely. The beasts would win battles, but never peace. They would destroy cities, but never control them. No matter how many humans they killed, more rose in their place, carrying weapons, carrying fire, carrying the will to fight. Soon, the beasts began to lose something they had never lost before: control. They realized that no matter how strong their claws, no matter how powerful their ships, they could not rule the minds of humans. Fear, their greatest weapon, no longer worked. And when fear failed, the empire trembled. Across the galaxy, the enslaved watched carefully. Could this truly be the beginning of rebellion? Could these humans be the spark that would ignite freedom for all? In hidden corners of the galaxy, secret rebellions began to stir, small uprisings inspired by whispers of Earth's defiance. The beasts tried to silence these rumors, but the more they silenced, the louder they grew. On Earth itself, the war turned into a deadly game of hunter and prey, except the prey was no longer helpless. Humans used every tool, every scrap of knowledge, every ounce of courage to survive. They became experts of guerrilla warfare, striking not where the beasts were strong but where they were weak. They attacked supply lines instead of armies, commanders instead of soldiers, ships instead of fleets. Slowly, piece by piece, they began to bleed the enemy. Humanity knew they could not win a war of strength, but they could win a war of shadows. They could turn survival into a weapon, patience into a blade, and defiance into victory. The beasts had conquered the galaxy with fear, but on Earth fear had turned against them. And in that turning, the first cracks appeared in the Empire's armor. Humanity had no empire, no great technology, and no vast armies. But they had something greater. They had the will to fight in the dark, the will to keep going even when hope seemed lost, the will to strike from the shadows until their enemy finally fell. The War of Shadows was not just survival, it was the beginning of something greater, the beginning of a storm that would one day shake the entire galaxy. The War of Shadows dragged on, and though the beasts still held the skies, their grip was no longer as strong as it once was. Humanity had learned how to survive, how to strike, and how to vanish, but survival was not enough. To defeat the beasts, they needed more than courage and more than tricks. They needed knowledge. That chance came on a night when a beast commander was captured alive. It happened during an ambush in the ruins of a once great city. Human fighters struck at a convoy with bombs and traps, and when the dust cleared, one of the commanders lay wounded, his massive body tangled in steel and fire. Instead of killing him, they dragged him into the darkness. For the first time in history, humanity held a beast commander as prisoner. In secret bunkers, scientists and soldiers studied him. The commander was monstrous, larger than any human, with armor that pulsed like living flesh and eyes that glowed with unnatural fire. At first, he roared and cursed, promising that his empire would crush the humans and grind their bones into dust. But chains held him, and hunger wore him down, and slowly the truth was pulled from him. Through pain, through clever questions, through relentless study, humanity learned what no other species had known. The beasts were powerful, but not invincible. Their bodies, though strong, were still made of flesh that could be poisoned, burned, and broken. Their living armor healed, but only if not struck in certain ways. Their machines were advanced, but they carried codes that could be infected, systems that could be hacked, and nerves that could be cut. The beasts had built an empire of fear, but fear was not armor, and arrogance was not strength. With this knowledge, humanity found hope again. Engineers built new weapons, weapons designed not just to wound but to kill. They forged rifles that fired concentrated beams of heat to burn through living armor. They created EMP bombs that froze beast machines in place, leaving them helpless. They wrote viral codes that spread through beast technology like sickness, shutting down their weapons and confusing their systems. Each weapon was crude compared to beast creations, yet it was made with precision, with purpose, with the single goal of finding weakness and striking it. And with these weapons, humans no longer fought just to survive, they fought to win. The first tests were small. A squad of soldiers carried new rifles into battle and brought down a beast warrior with a single volley. A group of hackers released a viral code into a beast network, and an entire patrol of machines froze in silence. In the mountains, an EMP bomb was triggered, and a beast walker collapsed like a dying animal. Each success filled humanity with new courage. For the first time, they were not running. For the first time, they were hunting. The beasts noticed. Their commanders, who had once laughed at humans, began to take them seriously. Reports spread through their empire of strange defeats, of battles lost to fragile creatures who were not supposed to resist. Fear, once their greatest weapon, now began to touch them instead. The galaxy too began to notice. Across enslaved worlds, whispers turned into sparks of rebellion. If the humans could find weakness, maybe others could too. If the humans could fight back, maybe the beasts could be overthrown. The fire of resistance began to spread. On Earth, the victories were still small, but each one mattered. A downed beast ship meant more alien technology to study. A captured weapon meant new tools for human hands. Knowledge grew, weapons improved, and strategies sharpened. Humanity had taken the first step from prey to predator. And though the beasts sent more armies, though they burned more cities, though they tried to drown Earth in endless waves of destruction, the humans refused to bow. For now, they knew the truth. The beasts were not gods. They were not eternal. They were flesh and blood and machine, and anything made of flesh and blood and machine could die. This truth was the turning point. The war was no longer only about survival. It was about victory. And victory was no longer a dream. It was a possibility. The beasts had awakened something they did not understand, and that something was humanity's greatest weapon, the belief that they could win. Once humans believed, they became unstoppable. The galaxy had seen empires rise and fall, but it had never seen a fragile species rise against monsters and turn the tide of war. Now, for the first time, it did. Humanity was changing. Humanity was becoming the nightmare that hunted the monsters. The turning point had changed everything. What once seemed impossible now became real, and what once seemed hopeless now carried light. Humanity was no longer fighting only to survive, they were fighting to win, and their victories began to spread beyond Earth. Using stolen beast ships, repaired with human creativity and alien scraps, small fleets of human fighters took to the stars. At first, their raids were desperate and risky, but slowly they grew in strength. One beast outpost was destroyed, then another, and then entire colonies of enslaved worlds began to hear the thunder of human weapons. The galaxy, which had lived in chains for so long, began to whisper the name of Earth. To many, it was just a small world on the edge of the galaxy, a place of fragile creatures not worth notice. Yet now those fragile creatures were striking at the empire of monsters. Entire races that had once believed resistance was pointless now began to hope again. In the shadows of conquered planets, slaves shared secret stories. They told each other of the humans who had brought down warships, who had killed commanders, who had discovered the weaknesses of the beasts. Hope spread like fire, and hope is more dangerous than any weapon. The beasts knew this and grew afraid, though they would never admit it. Their commanders spoke of crushing humanity, of burning Earth until no stone remained, but deep inside, they felt the tremor of fear. For every fleet they sent, they lost ships. For every army they unleashed, they lost ground. Humanity had become the symbol of defiance, and symbols are not easy to destroy. On Earth, factories hidden beneath mountains and oceans now worked day and night, producing weapons forged from both human science and stolen alien knowledge. Rifles that once fired bullets now fired beams of energy. Missiles that once carried simple explosives now carried codes that infected beast machines. Human pilots, who once flew simple jets, now flew stolen starships modified into weapons of rebellion. Each day, humanity grew stronger, sharper, deadlier. They were still far from equal to the beasts, but equality was not needed. All that was needed was the will to keep fighting, and that will had become unbreakable. The beasts began to retreat from certain battles, something no one had ever seen before. They abandoned outposts they once ruled with iron claws, and in those moments humanity claimed victories that echoed across the stars. Freed worlds lifted their eyes to the night sky, and for the first time in centuries felt that freedom might return. Yet even as victories spread, the danger grew greater. The beasts were furious, their pride wounded, their arrogance shattered. They gathered their strength for something greater, something darker. They had ruled the galaxy for too long to accept defeat, and they would not let one fragile species destroy their empire. In their hidden fortresses, they began to prepare their ultimate weapon, a nightmare designed to end humanity once and for all. But the galaxy did not know this yet. For now, the galaxy only saw the rise of humans. Alien races that had been silent for generations now sent secret signals, hoping to join the fight. Some offered information, others offered supplies, and some even dared to rebel openly, inspired by the humans who refused to kneel. The beasts had crushed empires, but they had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy that fought not just with weapons but with belief. Belief spread faster than fire, and once born, it could not be killed. Humanity had become that belief. In the halls of the beasts, their leaders raged and tore at their thrones, demanding Earth be destroyed, demanding humans be erased. But still their fleets returned scarred, still their armies returned broken, and still the whispers spread. Humanity had taken the fight from the ashes of their own world and carried it into the stars. They had gone from prey to predator, from victims to symbols, from forgotten creatures on a blue planet to the spark of rebellion across the galaxy. And though the war was far from over, though countless battles still lay ahead, one truth could not be silenced anymore. The beasts were not invincible. The galaxy was watching, and what it saw was the rise of mankind, the rise of defiance, the rise of a fire that no empire could extinguish. The beasts had conquered all worlds, but now all worlds looked to humanity, waiting for the next strike, waiting for the next victory, waiting for the day when the monsters who ruled the stars would finally fall. The galaxy was on fire with whispers of rebellion, and humanity had become the spark, but the beasts were not finished. They had ruled for centuries with claws of iron and oceans of fear, and they would not surrender their throne so easily. From the depths of their dark empire, they released their greatest weapon, a creation built not for conquest but for destruction. It was called the Devourer. Unlike the ships humanity had fought before, this was not just a war machine, it was a living nightmare the size of a moon, a beast that could swallow entire planets and leave nothing behind but dust. Its body was a fortress of flesh and steel, its weapons glowed like stars, and its roar shook the very fabric of space. When the Devourer moved toward Earth, the galaxy held its breath. To many, it was the end. Even humans, brave as they were, felt the weight of fear pressing against their hearts. But humanity had come too far to kneel now. They knew that this was the final stand, the last chance to prove that they were not prey but predators. Across Earth and in hidden stations among the stars, every man, woman, and child prepared for the battle. Fleets of stolen ships gathered, carrying weapons forged from both human genius and stolen alien knowledge. Old nuclear missiles were upgraded, viral codes were sharpened, and every fighter pilot swore that they would give their lives to stop the monster. For the first time, humanity was united not by fear, not by desperation, but by choice. They chose to fight together, to rise together, to risk everything for freedom. When the Devourer entered Earth's orbit, it blotted out the sun. Its shadow fell across the oceans and mountains, a shadow that promised the end of everything. The beasts laughed, certain that this final weapon would crush humanity's spirit. But humanity did not tremble. They launched their fleets, wave after wave of fighters, bombers, and warships. Tiny compared to the Devourer, fragile compared to its claws, yet each one carried fire in its heart. The battle began with fury. The Devourer unleashed storms of energy, wiping out dozens of ships in seconds, but still more came. Humanity's viral codes spread through its systems, slowing its healing. Nuclear missiles slammed into its living armor, burning holes that refused to close. EMP bombs burst against its sides, making its massive weapons stutter. Humanity was bleeding it, piece by piece, cut by cut, and for the first time, the Devourer roared in pain. But the cost was terrible. Thousands of human lives were lost in the first hours, fleets torn apart, cities struck by falling debris. Still, humanity refused to stop. Every loss only drove them harder, every death only strengthened their resolve. Earth itself became part of the trap. Hidden deep beneath the surface, humanity had built one final weapon, a chain of nuclear warheads tied together with alien reactors, powerful enough to tear a moon apart. The plan was suicide, but it was the only way. As the Devourer drew closer, drawn into Earth's gravity, humanity triggered the trap. A fleet of the bravest pilots flew into the monster's very mouth, sacrificing themselves to plant the warheads in its core. The galaxy watched as the final act unfolded. There was silence for a moment, a silence filled with fear, then light. A blinding explosion brighter than any star burst from within the Devourer. Its body tore apart, its weapons shattered, its roar silenced. The monster that was meant to end humanity was destroyed. When the fire cleared, Earth still stood. The beasts, who had ruled all worlds, who had crushed empires and enslaved races, had been broken. The galaxy, stunned and silent, began to whisper the truth. Humanity had done what no other could. They had faced the greatest terror of the age and survived. They had proved that the beasts were not eternal. Across enslaved worlds, chains began to shake, rebellions began to rise, and hope became unstoppable. Humanity, fragile and small, had become the symbol of freedom, the fire that spread across the stars. The beasts would still fight, their empire would still resist, but the tide had turned forever. And so the galaxy remembered this truth: humanity does not bow, humanity does not break, humanity conquers.